Hey everybody, welcome to Coffee Hour with Paul. Again, my name is Paul Abernathy and welcome to the stream. On today's episode, we're going to be looking a little bit at calculations and we're going to be working out of our Fast Tracks program. And we're going to be talking about probably what would be one of the toughest units that a student has to face in our Fast Tracks program. Look, our program is designed not to be easy. It's not designed to be overtly complicated. It's designed to give you the tools you need to understand the National Electrical Code. It's not specifically designed only for passing an electrical exam. It can be also used to gain general knowledge and understanding of the National Electrical Code. However, we've designed a competency review. We've designed it with chevrons. We've added stuff in order to engulf the learning process when it comes to exam preparation. And so we believe it's the best program out there, but it does not come without people having some challenges. And the challenges are that 3 of the toughest units in this Fast Tracks program have to do with calculations. It has to do with Unit 8, 11, and 13, and these can be flat out the toughest calculations that you may experience as an electrician in the field, trying to learn how to do calculations, and nobody's helped you in the past and you kind of fumble through it. And what we try to do is walk you through the basic knowledge of it, and then we give you a form that you're supposed to fill out along with us as you go, and the form will take, the lesson will take you through filling out the form. But what you don't realize what you're doing is that when you're filling out this form, you're actually learning the steps. And that's a process that helps people learn. And that's how we've been so successful in how we approach this. Because again, Unit 10, for example, will talk about the elements of the multifamily. And then all of a sudden, 11 will put all these pieces together. And so that's critical. But that does not mean that it's forever without people having questions. And I want to be able to answer those questions for you. So we have built in some features that allow you to ask questions while you're in your course, and we encourage you to use that feature. And I'll show you that, where to get to that here in a second. All right. So again, for all of those that are in our program, I'm sure you're more than aware that Unit 8, 11, and 13 are the toughest out there. You need to do those multiple times, and you need to take it slow. It is intense. There's a lot of information. And if you do it right, you will walk away with a lot more appreciation for it. Okay. All right. So this is Unit 11. And of course, over here on the left, you see all of your units. Okay. You click show more anytime you want to open up more if you're going to those. But again, there's Unit 8. There's Unit 11. There's Unit 10, which talks about the different provisions that you're going to use in Unit 11 and so forth. There's 19 units in it. But by far, the toughest units out there are 8, 11, and 13. Now, 8's dealing with single-family dwellings, and we not only teach you the standard method, but also the optional method. And then we work you through the forms. And you hear me talking about forms, and you haven't seen a form yet. You're going to see something in a minute. But you walk through it, and as you're doing it, our form will give you code references in case you get lost. But again, you also notice that right here, in your Fast Tracks program, you got that little blue chat cloud. And obviously, it's easier to use on a desktop or a laptop than it is in a phone. You might turn your phone to the side and see that type of thing. Or you may want to make sure you go up here and you collapse and get rid of the stuff on the left side. So collapse that down, and it may be easier for you to use. But that's the Fast Tracks Interact feature right there. You just click on it, type your question, cut and paste your question, do a screen capture of something, upload your picture. That right there, that is one of the most important benefits to this program. And there it is. You click it, it brings it up here, and you get to, right here's where you can attach an image. Here's where you chat, and here's where you click the send button right here. And you see here, this is a question that was answered by somebody that posted it, and we went on and answered it. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. It's always available to use, and that's what we recommend you put your questions. Now, if there's not enough room for you to do that, then we recommend you do it in a Word document or something in a notepad, and then you cut and paste it in here when you have the time. As I always encourage students to take notes, write things down, type things out, and then bring it and paste it. It might be easier for you to do that. Either way, that feature is there for you. All right, now, as you see, Unit 11 is load calculations for multifamily dwelling. And we're going to talk about one piece of this today that students struggle with. So I am going to leave you with, I'm going to give you a lesson today. Okay, so hopefully you stick with me for this lesson. But I just wanted to show you that you go through this unit and you'll see that it gives you this information. You're going to use this information here, whether you right click it and print it off, whether you screen capture it, whatever you want to do, whether you have your phone, you swipe it, whatever you want to do, you're going to be going back to this, because what you're going to do is you're going to download this form. This form has code references on it. It's got a process of how you fill it out. It's a multi-step process. And here you can download it right here in your program. So if you'd rather download it, you just click right here and you can download it. And what we're going to do is, based on this information, we're going to walk you through this form. Now, you might be saying, why do that? I mean, why have a form? Because this teaches you step by step. And in our program, it's all about you learning and what you can take away from it and how you retain it. In fact, I encourage you to print many of these forms off, whether it's the single family one, the commercial one in Unit 13, or this one in Unit 11. Print them off, laminate them, get a dry erase pencil with a fine tip, keep it in your code book. You can always use it down the road when you get on the job to do real load calculations, okay? So you don't have to fake it to make it. You can actually do the calculations. All right, so anyway, gives you the code references and walks you through, okay? Now, for example, here's the first box in this form right here, okay? Right here, this first one. Here's the first box, and we will break down exactly what goes in that first box based on this information here, okay? This information. So step by step, you'll go through it. Where do we get the 1,500? Well, it's 3 VA per square foot in accordance with 220.41 of the 2023 edition of the NEC. That's 3 VA per square foot. Well, if we're doing a size or dimensions, right, this type of thing, so we'll use the dimensions and try to do and work it out, okay? So in this case right here, I do see an error. This says 65. It's supposed to be 35. I think that if anybody were to calculate that out, that's actually supposed to be 35. Don't worry, by the time y'all see this, that will have been changed. But anyway, the total square foot is 1,500 square feet, and that's where this comes from, okay? All right, so we're working it out. So you work through it piece by piece. The next line is what? Small appliance branch circuits, okay? And you see that there's a minimum of 2. And the neat thing about the program is that you have all of these call outs. And so you can come up here and read what this call out means. And it gives you the code reference, right? There's the code reference for this call out right here, okay? For B, right there, okay? There's that call out. So it walks you step by step, but not only that, explains why you're doing it. And you're working through the form, okay? One after another. See how it's doing everything? Every single piece is filled out, okay? So that's important, that you learn how you do it. But we're not going to stop there, okay? We also, how to use it to be able to come up with calculation. We give you all the summary. Basically, you take the same information you already did in the calculation. It's really that simple. And then you just follow these steps here. Read one at a time all the way down right here. And we'll show you how to calculate the neutral conductor, okay? And all of that stuff is going to help you learn, and then the grounding electroconductor. And then we give you the form all filled out so you can see how it's filled out, okay? Now, that was a 12-unit complex. Now we're going to give you, we'll ease it up a little bit. We'll do a 6-unit complex. Same concept, right? Everything's working out exactly the same, okay? And we show you the same setup. Everything's the same, okay? The only difference here is the units, instead of being 12 of them, there's only 6 of them. That's the only difference, okay? And you see, we walk you through that as well, how to figure all this out, okay? Just so you see, no difference, Okay. Largest motor, how to account for the largest motor. All right. Now, the reason I want, and the neutral, again, we're going to give you the calculation for the neutral, how to do that as well, all the call outs. And we're going to give you the form at the end so you can check how you did it. It should match what you do. Okay. Now, we also are going to break it down into individual units of these units. So instead, if you're doing a feeder, for example, to one of the individual units, that's different than what we did in the service, right? So here, those units didn't change, but now we're doing one unit. And example of that is here's a unit going out to one unit and standard method for one unit. Okay, you should have this form over when you did unit 8. Same form that's used in unit 8. Okay, so you should already have that. And you work through it, same as we did before. All right, just kind of shows you all the elements. We kind of throw them up there for you. You already knew these steps. You already did this in unit 8. So no sense in regurgitating that. You've already been through it. All right. And we show it to you again. We do the neutral calculation again based on the information, right? And then we show you the standard method totally complete. And then, of course, we do have the multifamily optional method form that you can download. Here's that. Download that. Because now we're looking at optional method, right? Follow the steps in the optional method. What didn't change? The same data we used at the beginning, you're going to use for every one of these examples here. Were you following us and filling out the form? All of that type of stuff. Nothing's changing. Same appliances, same everything. You're just doing an optional method now, okay? Work your way through it. Fill in the blanks. Read the material. There's your example. Now, remember, what's different is when you're doing the neutral, even though you're using an optional method, guess what? You still have to use the standard method to calculate the neutral. So that's what we do here, okay? And of course, we give you the form after it's all filled out so you can check your work and kind of see what's going on with it, right? All those type of things. And then, of course, we do the exact same thing for the 6 unit in the optional method. Walk you through it. Again, if you have any questions at any time, please use that feature right there and ask your question. Okay, I could sit here and do this, cut and paste this, right click, copy it, and literally paste it in the chat. You want to see an example of that? Okay, watch. I'm going to left click. You can't see that, but I'll do this. I'll copy it. Now I'm going to open up Fast Tracks Interact, and down here, I right click it and paste it right there. Now I'm going to post it up on the screen. There it is right there. That's what I cut and paste right there. You can do that anytime you have a question, right? That type of scenario. So that is a powerful feature for you to use. Please, by all means, use it. All right. And we give you the examples. If something doesn't make sense to you, always reach out to us. Here's the optional method for a single dwelling unit. We walk you through one unit, same concept. Everything stays the same. Walk you through it. Any of it doesn't make sense, reach out to us anytime. I'm more than happy to explain it, any piece of it. Okay. And then you have a summary of what you've kind of learned during this lesson. And next you get to what's called these competency reviews and the answer key, okay? And how you do these. Oh, by the way, when you're totally done with the unit, you can click complete and it'll show as complete. When you finish all of the units and you've completed everything, you will have the option to print off a certificate of completion if you want to give that with your employer. And they are paying for it, then you'll have that option. But you have to click complete on every unit and finish everything in order for you to be able to do that. Now, what does it look like for competency reviews? All right, hold on for a second. Let me download these. And let's see if I can share this tab. Okay, so here's what your competency review will look like right here. And so this is printable PDF. You can fill it out. You put your code references. I'll just type in here. You can put your answer in here, whatever your answer be. And you print this out and you're going to grade your work with the answer key. So you'll grade your own work, right? And so we ask you good questions on here, questions that make you think, right? But then you'll get down here which is question 11 through 18, is using this information, okay? This information in order to answer these following questions, right? And it also is saying that in this scenario right here, how are you going to answer these questions, right? Well, you're using the standard method to answer question 11 through 18, okay? That's what you're using. Now, I've had some students ask me about this question right here. So here's your little lesson for today, okay? So I'm going to highlight this question. So this one says, of the heating or the air conditioning and associated motors, which is omitted? And what information are we using? We're using this information, okay? So there's our floor area, there's our data and everything. There's 8 units, okay? So this is an 8-unit complex, okay? And you know what? It doesn't matter whether I say it's 8 floors, whether I say it's 8 units, they're 8 separate units. So semantics, or whether it's floors, units, it doesn't matter, is 8. That's what you're thinking about, right? So first thing that we want to do with this in that question, okay, if you're just answering that question, and I'm going to help you out, this is a good lesson that I'll give you in today, is how do we determine heat versus AC? So we're looking in the 2023 edition of the NEC, where we're looking at 220.60, but we'll also be using 220.50 to understand something in the application of how we know when you have 8 units, what we're omitting, heat or AC, okay? So let's walk through this. So the first thing I would do is determine which is larger, the AC or the heat, but I need to get the individual elements first. So let's do it first. Okay, so the first thing that we would look at, and you and I both would look at, is the air handler. So this air handler is 1/4 horsepower, okay, at 115 volts. Absolutely going to use the 115 volts, okay? But we need to find out what the horsepower is for this motor. So that's going to take us back to here in the NEC, and we're in single phase. So it's 115, and we're looking at 1/4 horsepower. It's 5.8 amps. So write that down, 5.8 amps. Just write that down, okay? All right. Now back here, it's at 115 volts. So y'all know what we do, right? Amps times volts equals what? Watts or VA. We're using VA. They're synonymous with watts. So it is 5.8 times 115. That is 667 VA. So write that down. So that's your VA for the air handler. Okay, so I'll just write air handler. Next thing we're going to look at, we'll just stick with the AC right now, is we're going to be looking at air conditioning compressor. All right. Now, the good news with this one is it didn't give us in horsepower, so we don't have to go to the back of the book, 430, to the tables. All right. We don't need to go look at it. We can already do this because we are already been given the amps. So what do? The same as we did before. 14 times 230. That's what you use. You use what they give you. So 14 times 230 is 3,220. So let's do 14 amps. Is going to equal 3,220 VA. Okay, so that's the AC compressor. Okay, that's the compressor. All right, and then what else do we have for AC? Well, we have this, the condenser fan motor. All right, so let's highlight that. And that is 1/6 horsepower. Well, unfortunately for us, we're going to have to go back to the NEC for us to get that 1/6 for that one. So here we're at right here is 1/6 horsepower, and it's 4.4 amps. Okay, so let's come back here, and we're going to do 4.4 amps times 115. And that's going to give us 506. So we've got 4.4 amps times 115 volts, and that gives us 506 VA. And that is the condenser fan. Okay, we're not doing any calculation yet. We're just pulling numbers. Okay, so that's our AC. Next, we're going to be saying, okay, well, let's do the heat. Well, the heat's easy. It's kW, so we don't have to do anything. kW is synonymous with kVA, and 4.2 kW is 4,200 watts. It's also 4,200 VA, so that one's easy. So we write that down, 4,200 VA for the heat, okay? And we're also got to remember that the air handler is going to be blowing both the heat and the AC. Nothing in this question said anything about being a heat pump. We have to answer how we're given. And in this case, it's probably central heat in a common air handler that's blowing it around. So the resistive heating is 4.2 kW, and the blower is, again, the air handler blower previously was 667 VA, because we did that earlier, 5.8 amps times 115 volts. So we're going to add that 667 to that 4,200. Okay. So I add 667 to that 4,200, and that's going to also be the air handler for that one. Okay. So now we're going to add all these up and see heat, how the AC is, and how heat is at this point. We're going to see what they are. Okay. All right. So in this case, we've got the heat and AC. So the AC was 667 for the air handler. Okay. It was 3,220 for the compressor. So that's plus 3,220 plus 506 for the condenser fan motor, 506. Okay. So that's a total of 4,393 VA. That's the air conditioning loads. Okay. We haven't done anything yet but adding up stuff. So now let's compare that to heat. The heat was 4,200 plus 667, which is the same air handler, since that is not a non-coincident load. In other words, is when the AC is running, it's using the air handler. When the heat's running, it's using the air handler. So that air handler is going to be used regardless of whether it was heat or AC, right? So you have to include it in both of your comparisons. So we're going to do the 4,200 heat plus the 667, and that is 4,867 VA. Okay. All right. So right now, if I looked at that, I would say the heat is going to be pulling more VA, or has a higher VA than the air conditioning right now, right? And if you were back in the 2017 edition of the NEC, you'd be done, but you're not. You're in the 2020 or 2023. In this case, we're looking at the 2023. So there's something that you have to do a little different. And so we're going to look at that right now. So I'm going to share that with you. And this is where you're at in 220.60. It is non-coincident loads. Now, when we're doing a calculation like this for an exam, or we're doing residential or even multifamily, which is, some people say it falls into the commercial, but for us, it's multifamily calculation, and we have rules for it. And in this case, what we're doing is we're looking for what is non-coincident loads. Well, these are loads that will not be on at the same time. Now, this is not just unique for AC versus heat, saying that it's thermostatically controlled, so one can't be on when the other is on, that type of thing. But this does not always just apply to AC versus heat. For example, I can have a building with a bunch of motors in it, and I could have a situation where one motor is interlocked so the other one can't start, and they're on the same circuit, but they're interlocked in their design. So basically, they're non-coincidental loads. This one can never run when this one's running, right? So when we talk about non-coincident loads, you have to have a mechanism or a way for one not to be running when the other one's running. And with the AC versus heat, it's typically thermostatically controlled, so one is not being able to operate when the other is being operable, I guess you say. Now, when it talked about that air handler, remember, that's got to blow the air regardless of whether it's heat or it's AC. So the air handler is not part of a non-coincident load. That's why it's in the comparison, it's going to be added to what? Both, and then the comparison, okay? Remember, we're just talking right now basics. We haven't even confronted the fact that we have an 8-story or 8 units or whatnot. We haven't gotten to that yet. We're just trying to do the groundwork. All right, so what does the code say? Well, the code say, if it's unlikely that two or more non-coincident loads, doesn't have to be motors, but two or more non-coincident loads will be in use simultaneously, so it's unlikely that they're going to be on at the same time. It says use only the largest load that will be used at one time for calculating the total load of a feeder or service shall be permitted. Now, what does that mean? If you want to take it all and add it up and have a large service that's unnecessary, then that's up to you. You have the right to do that. But it's saying here that it's permissible to take the larger of the two non-coincident loads, or the two loads. If one is not likely to run while the other one, then I can take the larger, right? Makes sense? So again, because if you size to the larger, does it really matter? If you size everything, the circuits and everything to the larger, the load calculation is for the larger one. Does it really matter if the larger is not running and the lesser's running? No, because you sized for the larger. It's already big enough to handle the lesser. You get me? That's why this rule is here. But again, it's only when they're likely to not be on at the same time. And so you have to put some kind of mechanism in play to make sure that doesn't happen if you're going to use this rule here. Now, it goes on to say, if a motor or air conditioning load is part of a non-coincident load, and in our case, we are AC versus heat, okay? It says, and is not the largest non-coincident loads, then 125% of either the motor load or the air conditioning load, whichever is larger, shall be used in the calculation. So what that means is, if I'm comparing heat and I'm comparing the AC, and the heat is greater than the AC, which in our case it was 4,867 for the heat, but the AC was 4,393. But the largest motor that we have in this entire building is the air conditioning compressor. It's the largest. So what that means is, just like it says here, it says, now what you need to do is do that calculation, but you need to take that largest motor at 125% plus the sum of the other loads that are associated with it. Okay, so the easiest way for us to redo this is go, that unit was 3,220 VA, right? So I'm going to take that 3,220 and I'm multiply that by 1.25. That gives me 4,025, okay? Now, if you want to do that differently, then you can do what was our total that we had on that one? That it was 14 amps. If you want to do 14 times 230 times 125%, if I can see my calculator, there we go. It does the same thing, right? It is 4,025. However you want to do the math, okay? You want to do 14 times 230 times 1.25, we'll do that too, just so people ask. So we do 14 times 230 times 1.25, same thing. 4,025 VA. So that is taking the largest motor in that list that we're given, okay? And if you look at this list, that is the largest motor there, okay, in the list. And I will show that to you so you can see the list again. So here it is. The largest motor list is going to be that air conditioning unit, that compressor. So we're redoing the math. I'm going to do the air conditioning unit at 4,000. Oops, hold on. So we're going to do this again. Let me go and make sure we go 3,220 times 1.25. That is 4,025 plus the 667 for that air handler. Remember, 5.8 amps times 115 volts. So that would be 4,025 plus 667 plus the condenser fan. And that was 16 horsepower or 4.4 amps because we went to 430 dot. What do we go into the code? 430.248 to find that and see that. So we did that. And that was 506 amps. So we're doing that. So we're going to add that 506. So that gives me 5,198 VA. Okay. All right. Now, which is larger, the heat or the AC? Well, remember the heat was 4867. Now the AC is larger. So we're just doing one unit. So in this one, you're going to go with the heat, right? Excuse me, you're going to go with the AC because that's the larger. You omit the heat. Now, the next thing that you're going to ask me is, okay, does that mean that we take the AC on every floor or every unit, 8 units? No. Why is that? Well, let me show you why. So let's go to 220, and people struggle with this. But can you do that? If you want to, go for it. If you want to oversize it, that's fine. But now, what we want to do is we want to go back to the NEC, and we're going right here under 220.50, which is, again, just so I will show you. Let me scroll back to show you where it's at. Just so you see it. Right here, you see that that's under Part 3, and that's still what we're working in. So let's go back to it. And this is for your motors. Now, what does it say about the motors and air conditioning? Okay. So the motor is the compressor, which qualifies as a motor. Now, also down here, talks about air conditioning equipment. And it says the conductor sizing requirements specified in Part 4 of Article 440 shall be used to determine air conditioning loads. That is where it tells you take it as 125% for the sizing loads. And they're saying you use that here as well. No different than we did for the same thing for the motors. The conductor sizing requirements in 430.24, even though we're not sizing conductors here, we're doing loads. It's telling you what you can use to get the values that you need. So if I were to go look at 430.24, you see what it says right here? Same thing. 125% of the FLC rating of the highest rated motor, that condenser motor, the compressor motor, plus, and then the sum of all other motors in the same group. Well, they're all hooked to the same service that's coming in. So they're all in the same group. Even though there's 8 units, each one of them have their own air conditioning unit, they're all connected to the same essential groups, the A and B that's coming into the multifamily building. So they're in the same group. So we've already done that. And since this is what people struggle with in these calculations, when we did our load calculation, we could have 8 units. And there's air conditionings in every unit, for every unit. But that's no different here is if I have 8 motors or 8 air conditioners. I take the largest one at 125% and the sum of the others. Well, in your normal load calculation, we have already taken the loads, everything at 100%. We only need to have the largest motor, right? The largest motor at 125%, okay? That's it. So that's where we're getting that information. Now, let's take us back to 220.60. Right here, it specifically told us to take if a motor air conditioning load is part of the non-coincident loads and is not the largest of the non-coincident loads, 125% of either the motor load or air conditioning load, whichever is larger, shall be used in the calculation. Okay? That does not mean that we are doing this for every single unit. We only need to do this for the one comparison. Now, once we do that, then that is taken into account for the first unit. For every additional unit, all we're going to do is compare the heat versus AC. That's it. Heat versus AC without the 125%. We're just doing 100% comparison. So in this case, in the 8-unit complex, the 1 unit, okay, when we're doing this load calculation, we're doing 1 unit, and we're going to be doing that using the 5,198 VA because the AC was larger, and that is taking the 1 unit at 125%, which is, again, based on the information that we saw in 220.50 as well, okay? Taking that information, all right? Now, taking that information, What about the second unit, third unit, fourth unit, fifth? At that point, we've already met this rule for taking the largest motor or the air conditioning. The other ones, we simply take at their face value and compare the two. So in unit 1, we're going to be 5,198. But for unit 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 2 through 8, okay, we're going to be using what? We're going to be using the heat, because the heat was greater than the AC before we applied the 125% to the largest motor, okay? It doesn't matter that there's motors or there's larger motors in 8 units. We only have to apply this to one. And that's the significance of 220.50 to help us understand how this applies, okay? So in doing this, that's all we have to do, okay? And you'll also notice that in this language, it says 125% of the largest motor or air conditioning load. It is not plural, okay? Just one. So first floor is going to be, or first unit is going to be 5,198. So I'll write that down, 5,198. The next 7 units, we're going to use the 4,867 because that was what? That is the heat. It was greater than the AC before we applied this rule right here for 125%. So I'm going to do the math. So I'm going to take this 4,867, multiply that by 7 units, and that gives me 34,069. And then I'm going to add to it my 5,198. And that gives me 39,267 VA. That is my contribution for the AC versus heat for the entire building. So I did this little exercise here. And once I captured the larger of the two here, there's nothing that says that I have to do this for unit 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I can go back to what used to be just simply comparing heat versus AC, because this is a calculation for the entire building, not just for an individual unit. Okay, this is for the entire structure. Okay, so that's what you would get. So if I take you back here and you come down, the question is, of the heating or the air conditioning, the associated, which is omitted? Well, the heat is omitted on the first floor, right? And for the second through the 8th floor or unit, however you want to call it, that it is what's omitted is the air conditioning, because you're using the heat on those floors, okay? That makes sense? So that's how the rule is applied. Now, people that'll disagree with that is fine, but again, this has been run up the chain. This has been ran through a lot of educators. This has been shared with NFPA, many people, and they agree that this is how it's to be done. But at the end of the day, if you want to take every air conditioning unit, right, at what? At 125% and add all that up and then compare it to heat, instead use the 5198 for times 8, you're more than happy to do that. That is not how I teach it, and that is not what I believe, and that's what majority of the people do not believe. That is the way that you do it, okay? All right. So anyway, as you can see, a lot of information in our Fast Tracks program. That is how you would do that and how you apply that. If you have any other questions, you're always free to reach out and let us know. And I'm more than happy to explain anything about our Fast Tracks program, how we break things down. But remember, if you're a student, use that feature to allows you to interact. And that way you can ask questions as you go, and we can answer them in a timely manner so that you get the answers you need to keep you moving forward in your program. All right? All right, folks, till next time, stay safe, God bless, and hope you learned something in today's